Sahana vavatu, Sahanau bhunaktu, Sahaviryam karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu, Ma vidvishavahai. Aum Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Namaste. So now let's actually enter into the study of the Kaṭha Upanishad and take a look at the first shloka. But before we do that, let's talk about the names. Okay, the name of the Upanishad itself, Kaṭha, which you'll see in the background of some of the slides. Ka, of course, means with, and Ta is the name of Shiva, of course. What else? And Kaṭha itself means a branch of the Yajurveda, or the people who study that branch of Yajurveda. And what does that have to do with? Death. So it's no accident that Kaṭha Upanishad has to do with death. And the heritage of the word, of the syllable or root, ta, comes down to us in words like thanatos in Greek, meaning death, thanatology, the study of death, and so on. So Shiva as death is ta, and this Upanishad is about Kaṭha, about Shiva as death. Now, the hero of the story, Naciketā, if we break this name down, it's very interesting. Na, of course, means negation. And Chi, the cognate of Chi, is Chaitanya, consciousness. So Naciketā is a cognate of Ketu, the planet Ketu. And planet Ketu is well known as the one that takes away. And he can either lead to material loss or to liberation if he takes away the desires for material activity and so on. So Ketu is a marker, a signifier of liberation in a person's chart, astrological chart. So, for example, I have Ketu in the 9th house, house of religion and spirituality, along with Jupiter. And, of course, this means that the effects of Jupiter on Ketu are to expand it very much. Ketu takes away everything. Takes away all desires for material existence. So this, of course, is the functional definition of liberation. Now, Naciketa's father, Vajaśravas. Vajaśravas means the son of Vajaśravas. And so who is Vajaśravas? Well, Vajaśravas means one whose fame is derived from giving, especially food. So here he is at the opening of the Upanishad, celebrating the Viśvajit sacrifice. The Viśvajit sacrifice is where you give away everything. And this usually is a prelude to taking sannyas toward the end of one's life. So at this point, one would be very concerned with the results of karma created by these religious ceremonies and so on. So this is where we join the participants. Naciketa's father is trying to attain lasting fame and entrance into heaven by performing this sacrifice in which he gives away everything. And Naciketā, don't take away my consciousness. Naciketā is there, and, well, we'll get into it after we do the first verse. Aum Ushan Havai Vajaśravasa Sarva Vedasam Dadau Tasya Naciketā Nama Putra Asa. Gautama, the son of Vajaśravas, desiring rewards, performed the Viśvajit-yajña, giving away all his property. As the story goes, he had a son named Naciketā. So Naciketā, don't take away my consciousness, is the result of the sacrifice. You see the symbolism here? He was performing the sacrifice to take sannyas. And the purpose of taking sannyas, of course, is to renounce all material desires and possessions and things. So he must have been very old. He must have been near death, actually, because to give away all your possessions is a very extreme act. So then the problem is desiring rewards. See, he was desiring a reward. He wanted to go to heaven. He wanted some result from his sacrifice. So because of this desire, he was willing to do things that were maybe a little bit off. See, this is the problem with desire and desiring results, especially from spiritual activities or religious activities, is that they introduce a kind of desperation into your thinking because you want to attain the result. So you're kind of willing to cut corners and do just about anything, right? And that is indeed what happens. Tam takumarang santam dakshinasu nityamanasu shradha vivesha somanyata. As the presents were being carried to the brāhmaṇas, faith took possession of him who was still a boy. He thought, Pitodaka jagadhatrina dugdhadoha nirindriyaha anandana mate lokastan sagacchati tadadat. He who gives away the cows that have drunk water and eaten grass for good, whose milk has been milked for the last time, and which have lost their organs, goes to those worlds that are known as joyless. So, because of Vajaśravas' desperation, his desire to attain heaven at all costs, he was giving away gifts to the brāhmanas that were actually not suitable. He was giving old cows, decrepit, used up, They'd eaten all the grass they were ever going to eat and drank all the water they were ever going to drink and gave all the milk they were ever going to give. And their organs were used up. In other words, they were incapable of bearing calves. So these useless animals were a burden and should not have been given as a gift in a sacrifice. See? So why would you give somebody, if you want to impress someone by giving a gift, you don't give them some old used up thing, all dirty and scratchy. You want to give them something new and beautiful, isn't it? Something useful, productive, that will deliver value for a long time. So this was exactly the wrong thing to do and would result in the sacrifice backfiring and condemning him, Viśvajit, to a next life in a planet where there's no joy. That means hell. In other words, he was going to offend the brāhmanas. Now, this is back in the days when brāhmanas were really brāhmanas. A brāhmana, of course, is one who lives in Brahman, one who knows Brahman, one who has realized Brahman. And of course, brāhmaṇas today. You see, the difference is when you start to rely on family position, jati, family tradition, birth in a certain family, janma, then over time, everything decays. And especially in Kali Yuga, nothing is what it appears to be, or nothing is as it's labeled, as it reads on the label. So the so-called brāhmanas today are only brāhmanas by virtue of taking birth in a certain family. They don't have the qualities of a brāhmana, and they don't have the work, the activities of a brāhmana, except in maybe some rare instances. But what is a brāhmana, or what any of the varnas are, is defined by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. He says, Chatur Varnyam Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasaha. I divide the 4 varnas, the 4 castes, created by me, by quality and work. And later on, he defines that in detail as the brāhmanas are those who are conducted by the mode of goodness. Sattva. Sattva guna means that their work, their qualities, will be not at all harmful to anyone, that they will use intelligence and learning to teach and help others attain self-realization. So this is a real brāhmana. Whether or not one is born in a particular family, if one can understand and realize the Vedic literatures, specifically about Brahman, and teach those, represent them to others in a helpful way, that is brāhmana. Not anyone who just wears, a cheap thread over their shoulder or claims a birth in a certain family. It's like, so what, We see brāhmanas, so-called brāhmanas today, working in government jobs or running a business, becoming engineers and going to the West and developing computers that are going to mess everything up. So hey, a real brāhmana, first of all, never leaves India, according to the tradition. A real brāhmana spends all their time doing puja and meditation and realizing Brahman and understanding these shlokas, and then helping other people understand them too. So not only are brāhmanas capable of realizing Brahman, but their students are too, regardless of their background or caste or nationality or whatever. So a real brāhmana is very, very rare, hardly to be found at all in Kali Yuga. Beware of imitations. And just because somebody has a big title in some religious organization does not mean that they're realized. In fact, it usually means the opposite, that they're a political climber, a social climber, and they've put hard work for years and years mastering the politics of this particular organization and getting themselves into a position where they have some designation of power. In other words, it's material. It's passionate and ultimately ignorant. Because, of course, no one who attains a big position is going to have time for self-realization. See, the maxim about it takes 10,000 hours to master something certainly applies to meditation. But what to speak of study of the Vedas, knowledge of Advaita, and so on. So these brāhmanas, the guys you see on TV with big organizations and big followings and big budgets and big temples to maintain, they're more like businessmen. They're not so much like sages. The real sages are hidden away up in the mountains. Like when I came to Sri Lanka, it took me 2.5 years to find Bhikkhu Jnanananda. because he was holed away in some tiny little monastery way up in the mountains. And basically the only way to find him was to find some of his followers and track him down. And the same goes in India for the real authentic followers of the Vedas. They're there, but they're really hard to find. You go to Rishikesh and go to one of the commercial temples, and approach one of the famous teachers that got thousands of followers on the internet. Come on, They're just going to ask you for a big donation, or they won't have time for you at all. And maybe even then, they won't have time for you because they're too busy raising money from other people who can give more. So, to realize this knowledge, first of all, you have to be a brāhmana. And Naciketā, as we will see, manifests all the symptoms of a real brāhmana, even though he was still just a young boy, Kumara. Aum Tat Sat. Aum Shakti Aum. Aum Namah Shivaya.